Hello, everyone. This is Kyla from Hidden Gems Literary Emporium, your family-owned nonprofit community bookstore. And today we have two very special guests, Mr. Bevan Knight and Miss Naomi Knight. And Bevan Knight, well, did you guys author this book together?
Well, I wrote it and Naomi went through and rewrote it. Went through and I think I'd written twice as many words as ended up in the final book, a whole chapter as well.
For every page, I took out half a page.
So we have Mr. and Mrs. Bevan and Naomi Knight, who are the authors and orchestrators of this book. Now, let's see. Can we see? Come on, Zoom background.
We all got a big thingy in the way. We need to get rid of that.
I'm trying to do that. Well, you know what? I want people to see this book, so I'm going to take my background off. Let's see. Background. And you know what's so funny about me doing this right now is because at 2:00 our time, I had an interview with an author from Michigan, and he had a virtual background on, and it made it look like his head was floating. And he said, well, I don't want to take off my background because I'm in my car, but I don't want to look like a floating head. And I said, take off your background. We're very relaxed people. If you're in your car, it is what it is. And so look, now I had to do the same thing. But now, more importantly, I could show the cover of your book. The Wishing Tree. This is part 1. And the second part is Earthlight. And those of you that love Hidden Gems, well, not that you don't love Hidden Gems if you don't know this, but a lot of people have come by and this book flew off the shelves, The Wishing Tree. So Mr. Bevan and Miss Naomi, I would like to start this interview by asking you both to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about you, and tell us a little bit about what inspired the authorship of, let's start with The Wishing Tree, since that's first.
Okay. My how shall I start? My background, I've done a lot of things. We're both getting on in years. I've done a lot of things, so it's hard to know where to begin. But I worked in a library for a long, long time. And,
the National Library of New Zealand for 43 years.
And in that time, I saw a lot of changes. I brought in I helped bring in the digitization of the library, having all the catalogue available for users. And we did a heap of things there. When I wasn't doing that, I was out competing in running events a lot of the time. We did a lot of long distance runs, a lot of marathons, half marathons, road races, cross country. And I was a very passionate member of a club in Wellington. And then what? Eventually, my joints were getting a little bit sore, so I retired from running, and then I finally got out of the library business, and I needed something to do, and I'd always written short stories. And one of the short stories I'd written was called The Little Girl Who Wanted the Moon. And this is actually a chapter in The Wishing Tree itself. And when I looked at that story, I saw it had possibilities. And I started thinking more and more about how our desires, our motivations drive us or set up sometimes obstacles in the way. Sometimes they give us great motivation to do things. So anyway, that chapter built itself up into without too much prompting from me, really. It seemed to do it itself. I mean, if that sounds crazy, probably it is crazy. So I wrote that. Naomi got involved and started.
Can I give my version of my involvement?
You do your version now.
I started reading this wonderful story, and immediately I thought, this needs tidying up. And I critiqued his work, and he said, look, you were in the earth and you're good in the kitchen. I had a career in the National Library. And so the early stages were a little bit fraught. But then he acknowledged, well, I said, well, let me have a go at it. And if you don't like it, don't worry, you know, you don't have to have it. And then he liked my tidying up, which was, like I mentioned, take a page and reduce it to half a page. And once he saw that and that his story was still intact, we started working together in a far more amicable fashion. And he grew to like me. He grew to see that I was more than his cook. Back to you again.
I think I almost been more than the cook. Yeah.
You two crack me up. You two are so funny. And I love your relationship, first of all, and your marriage and your love for one another. You could just totally tell. And I think it's quite interesting and cool to see a couple working together and to create something beautiful for us all to enjoy. And so that's really cool. And I think people will get a kick out of the way that this happened, and especially Miss Naomi, how you described how you had to tidy it up. But and you know, as wives, sometimes we feel that or do that, and then as husbands, I guess sometimes it's like, well, tidy it up if you feel like it needs to, and then if I don't like it, then we're going with my version. So I really I love the way you did that.
You got it.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I do write very fast and very badly to start with, because I just want to get the stuff down. And once it's down, then I would have had to have done a lot of work if Naomi hadn't jumped in at that stage. So
okay, yeah. We evolved the system where I would be given a chapter at a time, a copy of a chapter at a time. Trust was achieved slowly. And I would go through and bracket something. Do we need this? What about such and such? Suggest this. And all the time shrinking it, and he'd get it back. And then next time it came back to me, I would take out a bit more, and so on. And so I tried to be devious and not take out too much at once. And that worked out quite well. And
I would say so too.
It got to a stage where we were working really closely together.
I think that's beautiful. And I agree with you that I think it worked out quite well. And so, okay, so still talking about the wishing tree. So you're saying that this entire book was pretty much based on a short story, which is, I believe it was chapter 35, The Little Girl Who Wanted the Moon, right?
Okay, well, it's not so much it was based on it as it just grew from it, really. It was the, it was a starting point, and I just kept on, well, it went through several versions as well as it went, and and then you've heard the rest. A lot of chapters and a lot of words which were gradually brought under control, really.
That's great. And could you please, because I know the summary of the book and the people who came by to get the book know the summary, but could you just please, for people who may be watching this video who do not know the summary of The Wishing Tree, could you give us a quick recap of the plots?
Oh, the plot. Oh dear, can we do that?
What's your clock?
Oh yes, there is a plot, definitely. Well, I can give you what's on the back of the book. It starts off with the sorcerer and the sorcerer's apprentice. They're in a desert, learning how to do magic, and then this mysterious tree and a tree spirit within it.
Just read it.
Yeah, this mysterious tree and the tree spirit gets the sorcerer's apprentice attention, and he becomes captivated by it. And when the sorcerer wants to destroy the whole thing, he reacts very badly. He kills the sorcerer and takes the tree away. And that really starts it. So it starts with a bad act, I guess, and leads to increasingly bad consequences. And shall I read the what I've got as a summary?
Feel free, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When a sorcerer's apprentice locks a powerful spirit in a tree, the nomadic tribes of the Arctic face a bleak future. Supplies of game and fish dwindle, and young men desert their families on a quest of illusory dreams. Included in the expedition to deal with the vengeful tree spirit are young Dorno and the woman he rescued, Sheena. He is seeking high adventure. She is in search of her foster parents. Neither of them are aware of the far more terrible foe that lurks in the shade of the tree. And that's just the first volume of the trilogy. So, yeah.
And if you could say, how much time do you think it took you both to get this book to a point where you said, okay, this is the story, this is what we're going with, we're ready to print it?
How much
Well, there were
time?
other things happening.
There was
There was a great deal of activity in our lives, and I don't think you ever put a starting date or finishing date on it, did you?
no, I didn't. I would say on and off over at least 3 years, on and off. Would have condensed into perhaps the best part of a year's work. Yeah.
Okay. And when you were coming up with this story, and Earthlight as well, because I do want to start transitioning into Earthlight, was your process to just go with the flow, or did you have an outline? Did you know how the story would go? Tell us a little bit about that.
To a large extent, it was going with the flow. I had a rough outline, but it was very rough, and it still is rather rough, even though I'm now 2/3 of the way through the third book, but it's still a rough outline in a way. Things can change. I'm never quite sure how, I wasn't quite sure how The Wishing Tree would end, and I'm not quite sure, I wasn't quite sure how Earthlight would end either. I had a fair idea, but everything had to come into place for me, and that took a while. And yeah, Earthlight, of course, is these creatures from another an alien intelligence. These creatures doing their scientific expedition start off with planet Trilfan, and then move on to planet Earth for the second book. On the way to planet Earth, they upset an asteroid, which then goes on to threaten the earth itself, which is, I guess, the structure of the book is around that idea of the earth under threat. But the main point of the book is really the characters and how they cope with, especially the family, the Conway family, how they cope with this this situation. They're all off in different directions, doing different things. And the very talented mathematician is seduced away from that into the natural world, the natural life, away from the artificiality, with half the world involved in virtual reality systems of one sort or another, and locked into different kinds of entertainment. So it's really a study of what they do, how they cope, and really, you know, and the final outcome. And it's also looking at how people understand the world in terms of their own background. We shape the world according to especially our early experiences, but what's in our minds at any time. We form a picture of the world through our brains, and that can profoundly affect how we pursue, how we carry on, what we do after that. What can I say, really? I'll read what's on the back.
Okay.
There is much ado as the Crowans take on the earth in this second volume of the Seeds of Time trilogy. In the mix are a deadly comet, 2 lost children, and a family attempting to cope with the pitfalls and promises of a future world. Knowledge of the first book, The Wishing Tree, is not necessary for an enthralling read. I think probably it isn't necessary, although for the third book it would probably be necessary or desirable to have read the second, but I think I'd still stand by that. You could read the Earthlight without the need for the other book. So yeah.
And I'm glad that you said what you said about the ways that we shape our world and how our outlook is based upon things that we see or how we grow up. And I was going to mention how the books seem like, even though they're fantasy type books, there's still themes that we as readers can remember and apply in our daily lives. And so even with the Wishing Tree, you know, there was a tree that was taken, but when I read the summary, it made me think about environmental issues and how that affects people in different places, and how sometimes in a community there may be a handful or a few people who are willing to go address whatever the situation may be. And so I really like that about these books too.
Thank you. Yes.
Let's talk about the Wishing Tree very quickly. Well, first of all, I have to say I love the covers of these books. I think they're really cool. And so the first one, the theme of the Wishing Tree is green, rightfully so. The theme of the cover for Earthlight is blue, which is cool. Are you at liberty to say what the name of the third book is?
I've got a working title for it.
Okay.
It's,
feel free to share.
More about mind. The third book is more about the mind, the state of the mind, and a group of people who have worked out a way of taking I don't know if you know much about the brain, but the various cortexes in the brain will map the world, and the various neurons will respond, will actually, for example, you look at something and the impulses from the eye will respond on various surfaces of this map, which are all covered with these little neurons, and each neuron that will give a response according to the and let the brain know exactly what's being said. The brain will then put the whole picture together. So the people in the third book have worked out a way of picking up what the brain is doing, and then what you imagine, because you're using the same maps when you imagine things, and grabbing what is in the mind. So actually a kind of mind reading, at least with images and sounds, with some things. And so the devices they are using they're very excited. They're going to get a world where people discover much more about themselves and about others, and they see how everyone is very much the same, really. So what they are calling them, what it's really about is a company which calls itself the Dream Catcher Company. The Dream Catchers, they are dream catchers. They're going to catch people's dreams, and if it's a bad dream, you will learn a great deal from it if it's brought out, and you actually go through the experience of it properly and then resolve it. And if it's a good dream, it will reinforce your motivation to go to whatever it is. So it's really their aspiration and how that comes rather unstuck in the real world. So it's that kind of thing. So at the moment, the working title is The Dream Catchers, and that will round off the trilogy. I'm not sure about what color the cover of the book is going to be. I have to think about that later.
Like gold would be nice.
Perhaps a gold color.
Or will we sort of explore the microcosm and expand it out to the macrocosm, do you think? Is it getting the relationship?
I'd like to go that far. I'm not sure about that. But it's a lot of it is about it's about the mind, how the mind works, how we construct the world according to our understandings and our what we read, what we experience, especially early days, especially if we're having books read to us when we're nice and cozy in the womb. I think that my brother Murray, I think that's what Benacita did for the children.
Oh, our family had two very bright children when the reading started at a very early age, and they are exceptional readers.
Yeah.
Reading at early ages makes a huge difference in the development of the child into the adult. And you two being, it seems, very much lovers of, as you said, Miss Naomi, language and reading and writing. I imagine that books were a huge part of both of yours childhoods.
Oh, really? Well,
not so much yours.
No, I was running around on a big farm And there was only candlelight at night. So the reading matter was already very limited. And I learned to read with comics that had been passed on, regular comics. But I was very excited and with reading, and I used the comics. I would read the comics and automatically improve the lines. You know, I think, oh no, that doesn't sound right. So I would just correct it in my mind. And I had limited educational opportunities, but once I grew up, I started to go to night school, and I read everything I could. I got really good quality of books on psychology and philosophy and various things, and I just read and read. And a lot of my education came in more on an adult level, but I had an incredibly fulfilling education, growing up in a big family on a beautiful farm where we had a mountain and a shoreline and endless types of animals. We all had to work very hard, but it was an incredible education. And by the time I was 5 years old, I could make the tea and toast and start a fire. And yeah, my education was different, but it was good.
Yes, it seems as though you learned how to survive. If you could start a fire when you're 5 years old.
Yeah.
That's quite incredible.
There was no electricity.
Wow. And so did you, I'm just curious now, did you two both grow up in New Zealand?
Pardon?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
We were born in the Second World War years.
Wow.
Our parents were teachers, and my parents were farmers. And at that time, poverty was a major factor. But
Wow.
I didn't know anything about poverty. My life was so rich.
Right.
We rode horses to school. So I was not personally feeling impoverished.
Yeah.
And another thing that I picked up from what you said is it seems as though you were meant to be an editor. And I thought that when you talked about reading comic books and saying, well, it should be like this. Why isn't it like this? It needs to be better. Like this is how it could be better. And so, and again, that goes to what we were talking about even before we started recording about how children will grow up to do things that they have been doing when they were a child. And so that just reminded me of that conversation we were having.
Yeah. And then there was the inheritance side. My mother, even though she toiled to get meals on the table 3 times a day, she still found time to write letters to the editor of the newspapers. And she was very talented. She had a whole bag full of talent that really couldn't be expressed in those times. The Second World War had a big effect on New Zealand because all the young men, of course, all were sent to the war.
Yeah, unless they're indispensable jobs. But Naomi's family, 9 children.
Wow.
She was in the middle.
But we all prospered.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's a beautiful thing. I want to, last question that I have for you both. If there are any readers or anybody who's watching this video who, again, I want you guys to come by Hidden Gems Literary Emporium and get your copy of The Wishing Tree. Well, this one is ours, so you can't have this one, but we can order this one for you. And we do have more copies of Earthlights. And please, Mr. Bevan and Miss Naomi, if you could please keep us posted about the third book whenever it comes out. No rush, but we would definitely like to have it in our store and include it in our book tours. We also do free book festivals for schools. We're launching that in April. And so just keep us posted on everything you have going on. But my question is, if there's a reader who would like to maybe ask you to a question or leave a comment or give some feedback on their thoughts on either The Wishing Tree or Earthlight, what's the best way for people to connect with you, maybe online? How can people reach you?
Well, you can go to my website. It's bevanknight.com.
Okay. And I'm sure we can find out more.
Yeah, there's also a Facebook one where you can leave questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So you are on Facebook under Bevan Knight, and you also have a website, bevanknight.com. And so I want to encourage everyone to go on there and leave them some feedback, especially the people who came to Hidden Gems and got the book. And if you want to get more information about the third book that will be coming out, which I am quite curious about, even from, I know it's still working title, but just from the quick little summary that you gave me, it seems like a quite interesting theme. And I like how it's the third part of this trilogy. It seems very fitting. Because like we said before, The Wishing Tree has a theme of, the environment. Earthlight is more atmosphere, space, sea, other planets. And then the mind is your own environment in your head. So I think that's really cool. I want to thank you to Mr. Bevan Knight and Mrs. Naomi Knight for your time today. You two have been a lovely conversation, and I love the quirkiness and charisma between you two. And I think that it's beautiful. Oh, I just thought of one more question that I meant to ask earlier. What piece of advice would you give to married couples who are working on a project together, maybe a book, maybe they're writing a book and it's their first time working together as a team? What would be one piece of advice that you would give this couple?
I would say take your time. Don't rush.
What's so funny?
It all comes down to patience.
Patience. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Go slowly. And don't stay cool. Stay cool. And
I think that's
work. Yeah.
That's right. Be patient, stay cool, take your time.
Look for your common ground.
If all else fails, stop and have a cup of tea.
Or coffee. Yeah.
Take breaks, make sure you have tea in the house, relax. Maybe I'm pausing because I'm thinking of all the times my husband and I are working on things. And I want to say, I used to have a password in college and it used to say, oh no, it wasn't that. It used to say confidence is key, but I'm thinking communication is key. So I would say, and of course you two have much more experience working as a married couple together than I do, obviously. But on top of what you guys are saying, I would also tell people to be patient when you're communicating with one another and when you're sharing ideas, and that it's okay to disagree, but like Mr. Bevan said, you have to find a common ground that you both agree on. And to take, again, what you said, Mr. Bevan, take your time. Everything happens when it's supposed to. You can't rush the process, and you need a warm glass of tea to cool you down if things get heated.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. You guys have been very pleasant, and I want to thank you guys for your time. Get quick question that I probably should know. How far are you from Australia?
Oh, no, we're looking to have to bring you back.
Good few thousand kilometers.
I got 4 hours on the
There's
plane.
about a 2 hour, they are 2 hours behind us near time zone.
Okay.
So
I'm
that gives
I'm
an
ask-
idea.
Okay, so that's not too bad. I'm asking because I told you we do 1,000 free book tours every year. And so in July, we're going from New Jersey to Florida. Next year, we're going from New Jersey to California. Our goal for 2024 is to go from New Jersey to Australia. And this is because we have around 7 authors from Australia. We love all of their books, and all of the interviews were great. And we feel the same way about both of you, your spirit and your personalities in general, but also, of course, the work that you produce with the Wishing Tree and Earthlight. And so I would really like for us to stay in touch and continue to help one another. Of course, we want to, again, encourage everyone to come by Hidden Gems Literary Emporium, your family-owned community nonprofit bookstore, and get your copy of The Wishing Tree and Earthlight. And stay in touch with us, and also Mr. Bevan and Mrs. Naomi on bevanknight.com. Thank you guys again for your time today, and let's stay in touch, please.
Oh, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
if you get as far as New Zealand, we will make you very welcome.
We
Oh,
certainly
yes.
will.
Thank you. That would be lovely. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon. I know that it will happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You guys have a great day.
Lovely meeting you.
Yes, ma'am. I look forward to it. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.